So obviously, a house price collapse I would argue, be a phenomenal thing for this country, which would do an enormous favour. But what it will make, but people will resist it because they have a financial asset, but they don't lose the house.
You know, some people either they start to impose their own political vision on it. And they'll think, oh, you're being small state. And you say, well, no, this is not what we're doing. We're also not being big state. We're not pro or anti-capitalist in a sense. We're saying there are changes that need to be made.
This is not pretend. This is wholeness. People are coming in with their whole selves to work. They're not hiding behind a mask of masculinity or materialism. They're actually allowed to express their views, that they're working together, they're collaborating.
The Manna Journey is the catalyst for change in our world. It's a consistent source of truth for the next generation and current leaders. Our mission is to change the world by reframing our current governance, by using ancient wisdom to solve modern problems, and by shaping innovative new businesses to have a culture of pursuit of purpose.
Are we living in a modern slave economy where nobody is given human dignity, where the poorest are pushed to the very lowest level of indignity and indeed lack of empowerment? Well, Philip Ullman thinks so, and this is part of the Manna Journey, a project to bring the Bible into everyday life, society and economics. And we're joined today by Jenny Sinclair, the founder and director of Together for a Common Good, which is a Christian charity looking at building a better society. I think we've established that there are bodies, intermediate bodies is what you're referring to them as, but voluntary sector, whatever you want to call them, is all fine. So there are these bodies that can start to bring about the Manna Journey, can start to push us in that direction. How can they be, I hate to use this word, but weaponized to start to change society rather than just changing a little bit of one particular town? How can this be really turbocharged?
I think the Manna is the example again. They came out of Egypt, they crossed the Red Sea. The first thing they experience is the Manna, which is a completely new set of ideas, which is hard for them because they're in a slaved mindset. But God provides everything they need, but he says, share it with each other. I don't believe the Manna, by the way, was miraculous in the extent that they didn't have to work. The grain came down from the skies, but they then had to process it. They had to grind it. They had to mill it, whatever, produce. They had to cooperate. They had to work together. They had to care for each other. On the Sabbath, there was nothing. It was almost a built-in famine every week to remind them what happens when you don't have, and then you work together to make sure that everyone's solved.
This is an absolutely critical part of it, is this working together, which can sound very, platitudinous, but it's actually the really sort of granular heart of this, is that if people don't work together, then we've capitulated to the slavery of the individual.
We've often understood this story as Christians to be literally loaves flying from the sky, and that has been slightly unhelpful, because the Manna story is much more about community.
I agree. So the loaves are flying from the sky leads us into welfare.
Exactly.
Yes. It's exactly.
Well, the council will fix it, the government will provide it, whereas what we want to do is cooperate with each other in order to produce it.
What we do is what we should be doing is looking at the verses, looking at the data in detail, and allowing it to allow us to develop our ideas, hypotheses. What we do is, as we said, we impose our worldview onto the text, and we start to say, okay, these are loaves that dropped down from heaven, and therefore was a welfare state. Therefore, we end up protecting people. Which actually doesn't work. And in terms of practical, the Bible is completely practical as well. It doesn't expect a revolution. It knows, this is both in Exodus 24 and Deuteronomy 7, do it slowly. Start in a local village, a local city, few thousand people, show that the context works. Because the expression is, otherwise you'll end up with wild animals filling the vacancy. You can't do these things quickly because of the mindset. But you can start to create models. You can start to. So what we do is, but there has to be models where in a particular area, we get rid of the concept of banking, which is inflating asset prices. We have to have a new form of debt relief, of debt forgiveness. And
what does that look like in practice, Philip? A local form of banking?
Yeah.
What does it look
No, it's effectively saying, you take Grimsby, for example, you say, okay, we want to prove the concept, so we're going to build almost a self-contained legal system to prove the concept with knowledge within the system that debts are going to be forgiven at the end of 7 years. Therefore, there's no point mortgages because the debt's going to get forgiven anyway.
What happens to house prices?
They reduce a house. What is a house? A house is supposed to be a home.
I agree with you. I totally agree with you. But people will massively push back on that, won't they? If they lose the value of their own.
No. I think the one advantage is, so obviously a house price collapse I would argue, be a phenomenal thing for this country, which would do an enormous favour. But what it will make, but people will resist it because they have a financial asset, but they don't lose the house. They still get to keep.
Well, in this scenario, Jenny, they own their house. What? And they're not going to lose the house. It's not going to be resecured. And they've got the house, and it's a home where they can build a family. And they look about keeping it within.
The other advantage is
constantly been trained into the house being a commodity, into being your pension scheme, into being a financial asset, and not a relationship. That we think, well, a minute, what actually has that price increase been? It's only been literally banks inflating it by printing money and pushing up the price. So it's not real anywhere.
And also, because interest rates have been so low, it's been the only asset class where you can actually make any money, isn't it? That's why people have invested in.
And let me say one thing, Jenny. I mean, I don't know what it's like where you live, but I was driving to work one day, and I went through a district of West London. I don't know which one it was. It was around Knightsbridge type area. And, I showed the person that was driving with me. I said, it's 8 o'clock at night in December. There are no lights on in any of these houses. And so what you were talking about is not 5 or 6 empty properties, 1,000, 10,000, 20, 30, 40, 50. I mean, just how many thousands of them? And it's because rather than invest in something that's going to benefit the community, you just buy a £5 million house and leave it empty until it's worth 8 million. It's a crazy situation.
But meanwhile, as you said earlier, people are sharing,
sharing beds,
six to a room because that's all they can.
And they're only a mile and a half away from the empty properties.
What is the need? The need is for security, for trust. If you own your home and you have no mortgage on that, you can suddenly start building. You haven't got the worries of repossession, of interest, of.
The other advantage in the manor economy, as you envisage it, is first of all you get your home, which is biblical. You get you have your secure home, but also then it isn't the handout; it's the hand up. So if you need money, you will get it from your neighbour, but your neighbour may want his fence painted,
or he'll want you to educate his children, or he'll want you to start working with others to build the homes that need to be built.
But it gives the dignity of work as well.
But you're starting to see a flow, a living ecosystem where people are coming back to life. It's a very, very short time to think, I'm losing money. I'm not. I'm actually gaining security. I'm gaining trust.
The other advantage, of course, is this. If you are looking for the community to provide for you in your old age, to provide for you when you're sick, when you're poor, then actually investing in that community is the greatest investment you can have, because the more vibrant that community is, the more your own personal well-being is going to be assured.
Absolutely. And if you look at, people talk these days, don't they, a lot about an epidemic of loneliness.
Yeah.
And they try and say, well, how are we going to treat it? You get some recommendation from the doctor or whatever, or you get some medication because you're depressed. Well, actually, this is a symptom of the system that's gone wrong. And in fact, the data shows that 18 to 24-year-olds are more lonely than the old, which is a counterintuitive.
Doesn't surprise me, though.
It's very sad. It's very sad. But yes, you're right. This sense of investing in your community is in your self-interest in the long term. But it's like at every level, there's something for people to do, to take part in, to contribute to. This isn't just like a top-down vision which involves government policy. Yes, government has a role, but I see this. There's a principle within Catholic social thought called subsidiarity. And the word subsidiarity comes from a Latin root around the word help. And it's the idea is taking decisions at the most appropriate level. Absolutely. And not too high. And so I always illustrate it by, if you're teaching your child to tie their shoelaces, you don't do it too young, right? No. So they can't do it. But at the same time, once they've learned, you don't do it for them,
yes.
Right? So you're giving people responsibility at the appropriate level that they can deal with. So you think of society in this sense of, the person, the family, the community, the local, the regional, the national, the international. There is an appropriate level of responsibility to be taken. So when we talk about this kind of vision, some people either they start to impose their own political vision on it, and they'll think, oh, you're being small state. And you say, well, no, this is not what we're doing. We're also not being big state. We're not pro or anti-capitalist in a sense. We're saying there are changes that need to be made. So there is something about big capital when it's unconstrained, which is very dangerous. It commodifies, it extracts, it exploits. But on the other hand, it is very creative. So you have to allow it to be creative, but not let it go too far. At the same time, the state, where the state is too centralized, it can be dehumanizing and disempower people, and we start all this outsourcing and so on. So both the state and the market are like these pharaohs in this modern Egypt that are undermining the life and vibrancy of what should be happening at community level. And so we all need to take responsibility.
And in terms of how we can start triggering people's change of mindset, again, the film last night, Mr. Bates and the post office just made it clear to me, people need stories, they're emotional. I mean, I haven't yet watched a bit about the current day, the actual characters involved, but it brings it to life. And what we can hopefully do with the Manna Journey is start to show Gary and the businesses these operating, which are going to generate amounts of money, which are going to be used to actually bring people back to life.
Because this is the great thing about your project. People are watching this on YouTube or on the website. There's various platforms where they'll be able to find this content. But you are really putting your money where your mouth is on this. You're saying, I can build this society or start to build it, just piece by piece. It's not all going to happen immediately, but companies are now being founded that are run on this ethical base. Perhaps you could tell us a little.
No, we'll start to meet Gary and various people involved with him that are living and breathing this. This is not pretend. This is wholeness. People are coming in with their whole selves to work. They're not hiding behind a mask of masculinity or materialism. They're actually allowed to express their views, that they're working together, they're collaborating. And there's a new narrative. And if we can start to replicate the emotional power of Mr. Bates and the post office, and start people to see in real world how you can run an organization and how these things thrive, and how trustees who generate cash and use it for the sake of society will be given more trust.
So we've seen how we can move away from slavery and build a whole new economic model, a whole new model of working together, a whole new model of volunteering that is biblical. The lessons are always there in the book. Thank you so much to Jenny Sinclair, and thank you so much, obviously, to Philip Ullman. We'll see you next time.